Krishna, let's move to the next segment. You have been playing with a variety of AI tools, more specifically vibe coding tools. I want to double click into your perspective, building with these different vibe coding tools, and really what stands out for you as some things that work when things that didn't work.
Yeah, I started off with the intent of learning these tools, right? Like I think from a very like a layman's perspective, you can think of these tools are like very overlapping, the segment and kind of the value proposition. So I was curious like how and what up like specific targets that they were aiming at and kind of how had they optimized there. So that's kind of inspired me to start with these tools. I started with 𝘰𝗲 and then Replit at the same time. And I was trying to build two apps at the same time. I was trying to build a stock screener app and a game. The things that I've learned when I started with that is like one, I ran out of free tokens with Replit. I couldn't even build like half of what I wanted to build. And so it was a question of should I pay and then try to learn versus not. And then interestingly, 𝘰𝗲 gave me a big runway to build actual app. And then as you already know, building doesn't take too much time with these apps, right? So you can imagine how short of a runway that I had with Replit. Obviously, the strategy now is to gain the user base and grow the user base. So you have this retention and kind of market share. So with Replit, I felt like that was not there and I kind of had to leave it. Though the tool looked pretty good at the beginning. And I was spending most of my time with 𝘰𝗲 and I actually ended up paying for a subscription and continuing to work with it. Second interesting thing I felt also is that there is a certain level of learning you have to do with the vibe coding and prompt engineering. Though the tools are pretty good at like trying to understand what you're trying to do, they are optimized for certain workflows or certain segments. For example, when I was trying to build a stock screener, like the first few prompts gave me a pretty good looking stock screener web app that I was happy with. But then when I tried to build a game, which was a pretty simple game that kids play back in India, which is basically a triangle and a rectangle overlapped on top of each other. So you can imagine the instructions are pretty clear. It took me about 25, 30 attempts to get that basic board design, and I couldn't do it at all, both with Replit and 𝘰𝗲. And I just gave up after a while. And it made me wonder, like, is it me that needs to learn the vibe coding and kind of how to use these tools? Or is it the tool that is trying to still kind of optimize and learn and maybe it's not optimized for this specific genre and is for others? And I think there's a little bit of both. I do think there is a prompt engineering expertise that will evolve and the tools also will evolve. And it's interesting to see how which ones are like going to be more optimized for the other. And then I moved to Cursor because I felt like Cursor obviously has a big market share. I found that between Cursor and 𝘰𝗲, Cursor was much better in debugging compared to 𝘰𝗲. 𝘰𝗲 would oftentimes say something went wrong. Do you want me to fix it? I would say, yeah, fix it. It would basically do something and then come back and say it's not fixed. And so you would kind of spend cycles doing it. But Cursor, on the other hand, was pretty good at doing that and solving the problem. That also made me wonder something else. For the Android app that I built on these, it's more than 3,000, 4,000 lines of code. As you start vibe coding, it gets harder and harder to go debug yourself, and your reliance on these tools become higher. And the code quality and like everything about it, you start to lose track of it and you start to lose your expertise in going and figuring out like how to do it, go slower. So the tools need to improve in that sense. And I found that Cursor was better at it. It gave me access to the files. It told me, go look it up and fix it, or I can do it. And then it would give more guidance in that sense. So I started using Cursor a little bit more on that sense. And I've also learned to decide which ones to use based on, if it's like simple web app, it's super 𝘰𝗲. If it's a little bit of a complex thing like an Android app, I go with Cursor because now I have a little bit more power and so on. So that's been my experience. And I also tried Lovable and Bolt. I found them pretty good with basic website kind of scenarios, like solopreneur or entrepreneur like pages.
Especially Lovable. I think it's really good for B2C,
Exactly.
basic consumer-oriented websites, and their design libraries are more geared towards that as well. maybe Cursor, because it's a more dev-centric tool, better geared towards more complex activity. One of the things I have seen with at least Lovable as it's evolving, they have a chat agent capability now so that you can brainstorm with the chat agent first and then optimize your prompts and your implementation plan before you actually go execute on it. Are you seeing these capabilities in Cursor also?
Yeah, it's basically a chat capability. It's basically you're chatting with an engineer. So I use the same interface to do it. It helps me learn. It makes me better at vibe coding as well because now I'm trying to understand how that's approaching problems as much as it's trying to build a problem. And then three, I don't have to burn tokens, I would think. I will say with Cursor, one thing that kind of really pained me is that sometimes I ask it to make a change and it goes and regresses in the things that it did in the past, and it doesn't always tell me. So you kind of have to be like doing this to make sure that the tool is sort of following the instructions in a way and you're having guardrails so it's not kind of changing code. I do that to make sure vibe coding is actually vibing with me.
When we first met, you said something that has stayed with me. You said that AI is training us just as much as we are training it. So obviously, in your experience, you are seeing that these tools are also evolving. And at the same time, your processes are evolving with it as well. You're learning better prompt engineering. You're putting together a better action plan. You're formulating your opinions on what tool may be better suited for which task. All of that is great. What are some reflections from your side as far as how you think AI is helping you evolve in your role as a product manager?
I think beyond what I said, I think for a product manager who is probably not skilled in coding, I have some experience in coding, but I can't like go and build whole things from scratch. But this gives me enough confidence in doing it. It can do the scaffolding. It can help me kind of systematically go and change things and progressively build. I feel like it's helping really me learn coding as much as it's helping me build things. It feels like the product manager's engineering skill will grow. And I feel like the software engineer's product sense will grow. And that's the sweet spot of how to work with these tools. And then there's always going to be this, how do you get this funnel to engineering roles? How do you keep them flowing? That's the piece that I find a little bit interested in how that's going to transform. So I find that's where the future would be, engineers with product sense and product manager with some engineering skills, and they are going to be starting to build at least like early stage 0 to 1 prototype and products before scaling it. And scaling it is a different story. I don't think these tools are like set up for that yet, at least.
I certainly resonate with that. I think there is a huge potential for some of these traditional roles to converge and then reshape how we build, especially 0 to 1. So speaking of 0 to 1, what are you planning to build next?
I actually have an idea to build sort of a cockpit for product managers, a tool that will truly be the partner for product manager to do all the things that product manager had to do, like, ideation, testing, writing requirements, keeping track, to elevate the product manager's role to more like strategic and more product sense.
Great. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. And generally, I'm just glad that there is a growing community of AI builders across all domains, all industries, all functions, because we all get to learn from each other. So in that vein, thank you again, Krishna, for your time and all your meaningful insights. And I am looking forward to see what you build next.
Yeah, me too. And thank you so much, Swati. This was great.